What's up, you beautiful collectors and action figure fans? Once again, it's the one and only Optibotimus coming at you with another video review. And on today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the new Hot Toys MMS 579 of the 1/6 scale Loki from Avengers Endgame. And I guess technically can also dub as a Avengers 1 Loki, which Hot Toys did release several years ago but has long since been sold out. This Endgame version gives them the perfect opportunity to revisit this character from the film and update him with an even better portrait. For the package, as you can see, you got that Avengers Endgame sort of look with the logo right there, a cool image of Loki. All the way around looks really good. You got that green sort of element going around, and then you can see Loki on the side. You got the Loki logo right up here at the top. Of course, you got the Avengers logo down there as well. Other side here has that same sort of thing going on, but when you come around to the back of the package, you can see the warnings, contact information, all that fun stuff. And then as typical, it is a slip sleeve style cover that you can lift up. You got the Avengers logo here on the back of that. One thing that is really interesting, I've always talked about this, but they no longer print the cast and crew that are responsible for making their figures. That's really odd. Right here, you just have that Avengers logo. Typically, they would have it printed there, but I don't know. Got this gorgeous goldish color all the way around. And then when you come around to the front of the package, very simple, but it's an open window that fully showcases the figure as well as a lot of his accessories. But for the packaging on this guy, that's about it. So without further ado, let's get him out here and see how cool he actually is. And here we have the new Hot Toys Avengers Endgame 1/6 scale Loki Lofison opened up and out of its packaging. And starting off first with his accessories, he does come with a really good amount. In addition to a pair of fairly relaxed hands that he has, you have a pair of kind of open hands. Both of them kind of look a little bit different. Maybe this is... yeah, that's a little bit more kind of matched up, where it's a kind of just open gesturing sort of hand, nothing overly spectacular, great detail, especially here with the back of the hand with that little armor piece. That's really cool. And then you got this one, which is kind of like a gesturing sort of hand, but you still have that same amount of armor right there in the back. You also do get a pair of fisted hands. Both of these look the same, they're just opposite, which really comes in handy when you have him holding his scepter. And then, of course, you do get a pair of kind of knife-holding hands, although it doesn't really hold them very well. And just kind of continuing on to the other accessories, he does come with a pair of daggers, which look really very nice. Coming in to take a closer look at those, great detail on there. You can see that they are slightly different between the two, which is really cool to see. You got the little pommel right here, which is different than that, but even when you look at the blade, slightly different. But one thing that I don't feel like these hold it very well. You can kind of wedge it in there, and you can definitely get them to hold it, but it's fairly loose in there unless you kind of wedge it between some of the plastic of the fingers and such. So it holds it, but not very well, as you can see. So that's kind of unfortunate. Realistically, I'm never going to really use these for his display, but Loki always comes with daggers, so it's nice to see these here. I'm actually kind of curious if these are similar to the ones that he comes with in the Loki series version of the figure. Who knows? Time will tell. But you also do get, I'm throwing things around, you also do get a pair of extra wrist pegs in case anything happens to the ones that are currently on him. And then because this is meant to replicate how he looked in Avengers Endgame, he comes with a couple extra accessories, such as this mouthpiece that was slapped on him by Thor, just because he would always talk too much. And again, great detail on that. Coming in to take a closer look, amazing detail all the way around. Very nice silver paint on there. The intersection here just is kind of black, but again, great detail throughout this entire thing. Very, very nice. And it just kind of frictions on his face, which, I don't know, a lot of times, you know, people kind of worry about putting this sort of stuff on figures and potentially scraping the paint, and I would definitely say that's something to be concerned about, so be very careful when you're using this. But he also does come with a pair of handcuffs. These were used when they were kind of walking him down and getting ready to take him back to Asgard. You do have a nice, and I feel like that's a metal chain. It kind of feels like it's a metal chain. But again, great detail
throughout the entire thing. It doesn't rotate or anything like that, and to kind of attach these, you take the hands off of them, slide these on, and then put the hand back on. Now, this is different than what we got with The Lost World, which you'll see here in a little bit, because if you remember, The Lost World, they were, in addition to being handcuffs, it kind of went down the body and also cuffed his feet. So that was a little bit different, and it makes total sense. So you do have that. You also do get a Tesseract, because why not? And as you can see, it's just this bluish clear cube, but again, great detail. With that guy, absolutely love it. I kind of wish they put a little bit of maybe like sparkle on the inside, just because it always kind of had that. So that would have been nice to kind of see, but still really very cool. He also does come with his scepters, and it's so funny because we didn't really know. I mean, Loki at one point in time had 2 of the Infinity Stones in his possession. That's kind of crazy, but you do have the scepter, which housed the Mind Stone, and you can see that you have this longer kind of staff-looking thing with the extra blade coming out right there, and then you have the shorter one that he used, kind of just walking around. This was more of a ceremonial one. He would walk around kind of like, I am Loki. This was more the one that he kind of walked around and would use to kind of control the mind of some people. And I do remember that when we saw this, a lot of people did assume that this jewel here was the Mind Stone. They didn't really think too much about this, if memory serves. But honestly, a lot of us weren't really thinking of the Infinity Stones back in this point in time, which is really kind of funny when you think about it. And then finally, he does get his helmet, which is absolutely gorgeous. You have a very nice bronze look throughout the entire thing with a lot of black dry wash, which gives it a very rustic and metallic look. It is plastic, but absolutely amazing looking. You can separate it into 2 halves. You just kind of pull it away like that. Now, there is no, well, no, yes, there is. Like at the top section here, there is some foam padding on there. And it's really interesting how you're able to actually put this on and it looks good. A lot of times these helmets would not look good, so they would always have to include some kind of alternate head or something like that. But if you wanted to, you can just clip that back together, and I'll show how to attach it here in a bit. But you can just have this hanging off on the side, and this is a very classic look for Loki, especially more of his villain sort of look. I've talked about this before. While I like what they're doing with Loki, and the new season of Loki is coming out here in the next couple days, which is why I'm doing this review, I don't like the fact that they're making Loki into a good guy. I like him as a bad guy. Historically, the beginning part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was a bad guy, started changing things. From time to time, you could see some good in him, and then by the end of Ragnarok, he was basically a full-on good guy. And they're still continuing that with the Loki series. So I'm not overly thrilled with that, but I still think he's a terrific representation of Loki, in that Tom Hiddleston does an amazing job with the character. But much like I like thinking of Venom as a bad guy, I like thinking of Loki as a bad guy as well. And like I said, this is a very classic look for him with the horns, and I think they did an amazing job recreating this. And then finally, he does come with his display stand. You can see you got the Avengers logo right there. You have the it's the logo that's on Mjolnir. I don't know if that's like Odin's logo or something like that, but you can see that in the background with a green hue, which looks really cool. Of course, you got Avengers Endgame right there, Loki, and then you have the adjustable cradle so that you can have him stand up. So that, pretty much all it is in terms of accessories. A lot of good ones, and really very impressive when you look at everything that it comes with. It's definitely a well-rounded figure in terms of his accessories, and gives you a lot of different display options. But coming in to take a closer look at the figure, an absolute terrific likeness. Now, is it spot on? No. From some angles, it looks good. Like from there, it looks pretty darn good. When you look at the front, it's not as great as I wish it would be. There's definitely a likeness that's there, but it's not as good as I think some of the more recent Disney Plus Loki figures look. The TVA version, the President Loki, I think all do a much better job of recreating Tom Hiddleston than this one here. This isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. And maybe it's just because this is meant to look like him when he's younger, because remember, Avengers came out several years ago. But it is a good likeness. Now, bringing in, staying in close
here so that you can kind of see what's going on. I'm going to bring in the other Loki that I have, that being the Dark World. I kept saying the Lost World, and I definitely think that, let me get this zoomed back a little bit. I definitely think that the new Avengers one has a better likeness than the Dark World version, but it's subtle. I think that this guy looks a whole lot better with the helmet on, which that might be what they were going for here. Because I feel like a lot of it is the hair, like how slick back it is and everything. Obviously, it's done like that to really facilitate having that helmet on, but I do think it is a marked improvement over this one. But you can see that the costume was very similar. Remember, as I said, this is how he's meant to look at the end of Avengers Endgame. And then when you come down to take a look at the other Loki, this is how he looked shortly after that when he went back to Asgard and had to face his father. Technically not his father, I guess. But you can see there is a difference in terms of the costume where there's more of the cape element here. This guy does not have the cape, which is perfectly fine, but I really love the cape on him. That's one of the problems that I do have with this particular figure. His head, the ball joint, does not really lock in. That's really unfortunate. I mean, I can kind of feel it on there, but you move it around and it definitely loosens it up. I'll touch on that here when I talk about the cons, but you can see a lot of similarities with the costume. But like I was talking about, the Dark World version came with the neck piece and then the chains that go down connecting to the actual handcuffs, and then that continues down to connect to feet cuffs, I guess. But a lot of the costume elements are very similar between these two, and you can really see that when you take a look at them. It's kind of side to side, but it is, again, designed to be a different costume. I do like the cape, though. I mean, I've always kind of liked just the simplistic version of this, but the cape aspect is definitely a very classic look for a lot of these guys, and I think that his hair looks a little bit better, just the way that it's kind of not as slicked back. But again, you can see some subtle differences, like with the very shimmery gold on his leg sections, whereas this is just done up in a sort of pattern. But everything else, very similar. Nice texture on the bottom of the feet and everything. Both are great. I tend to now only keep one version of a character in my collection, so this being the newer version of the character, this is the one that I'm going to keep, and I'm obviously going to sell this one off. But it's not a bad representation by any stretch of the imagination. Neither of the likenesses are that perfect. I do think that this one does a little bit better of a job in terms of the likeness itself, though. Now, like I was talking about with some of his accessories, you do have the mouse section right here, which, like I talked about, you just kind of friction this on, which I'm not the biggest fan of. You just kind of bring that over, and you totally feel it kind of rubbing on the skin itself. But you can do that if you really wanted to. And then again, the actual handcuffs, to kind of do that, you just take this wrist, you're going to pop that off, maybe, there we go, and then you just take that, loop that on like that, and bring the hand back up, peg that in there, and now you can have him with the handcuffs as he kind of appeared in the end scene there of Endgame itself, and you put that on there. So if you wanted to kind of recreate like the section where he was grabbing hold of the Tesseract, again, pull that off, bring this up, put that on, and then put this back there. One thing that I will say, though, is that he doesn't come with a hand that does a really good job of holding the Tesseract. So you're kind of left with just kind of him bringing these in, and the suit here is a little bit restrictive. So it's a little bit harder, actually, to kind of get his hands up around there. So you can kind of do something like that. I mean, it just doesn't really hold that very well, and he doesn't have hands that hold it. So I don't know, maybe just kind of have him cupping it or something like that. I don't know. I mean, that
like I said, it doesn't really, can't really do it all that well, and that's definitely unfortunate because you can't really recreate that scene from the end where he did it. I don't even know. I mean, you do have some of these other hands, so maybe you could do something like this. Let's see. Hold on. I mean, I guess you could do something like that. That's a little bit better. Using one of those other hands that was kind of flattened out like that, you could kind of do that if you wanted to have him holding it. So I guess you could recreate it, and then you take this little guy here and put this over his mouth, and that's definitely a before Loki season 1 sort of look. And then for the helmet, now what you can do, first what you're going to want to do is separate this piece just like that. It just kind of soft tabs into place, so just kind of wiggle that out. Now this is the part that I'm not a very big fan of. In addition to the head popping off, I don't like the fact that you have to stretch this. So you bring that around and kind of squeeze that slightly out and over his head. I really don't like that. Definitely makes me nervous. And then you just bring this back up and you just slot that back down, which can be tricky to do, especially here along the sides. One thing that makes it a little bit easier is the head kind of comes off. So you can take that off and just kind of line all that up and get that. There we go. Get that like that. Nope. Get that in there. Oh, no, I didn't. The lining up here is a little bit annoying. So you get that. Get that. And this looks amazing. Truthfully, this is probably the look that they were going for, the design that they were going for in terms of the head sculpt. Because once you cover up that hair, you can see how much better this looks. Now, it is very tight to the head itself. So, paint rub is definitely something that you're probably going to want to be careful with. And then you just take this. Again, I don't like how kind of loose that ball joint is in there, and then just give that a good push. And yeah, see, it just kind of, there we go. Is that on there? Oh, I kind of separated that a little bit. So just futz with this a little. There we go. And you can see that the biggest point of contention that I have, at least on my copy, is how loose that ball joint is. So that is really kind of unfortunate. But that is an amazing look. Absolutely Loki for me. I mean, like I said, I really do like everything that they're doing with him in terms of like developing the character, making him kind of like a good guy, but bit misunderstood, all of that. But that is such a classic look for Loki. I mean, it is how I'm going to display him. I think that it is just super, super rad. And like I said, once you put that helmet on him, that really does help the portrait kind of stand out and look better than it did without it on. For his articulation, as you can see, the head is on a ball joint down here at the neck. So it does get fairly loose, so be careful when you're doing it, at least on my copy. The shoulders here move in and out. There's not a ton of restriction, but it's not as loose as I would like it to be. He does bend here at the elbow, also rotates at the elbow, has a butterfly joint. I do feel like there's 2 joints at the elbow itself, but it kind of is limited by the kind of faux leather of his elbow section here. So you have to be creative with things. It does rotate at the wrist. That is standard. He does have a waist joint, but again, things kind of get locked up in there, so you do get limited range of motion. The legs do have hips in and out, forward and back. Not a lot of restriction at all in there. I mean, that's fairly flexible, honestly.
You can rotate at the thigh. You have 2 bends. Here at the knee, gorgeous chainmail style detailing on there. Very, very cool. And then the whole boot section here, it is a separate boot piece, so you get a full range of motion with the ankle, which is wonderful. You get all that articulation you would expect. But this guy really does kind of exude everything that I would think of with Loki and nails that overall presence of the character just about flawlessly. I love this. Overall, Loki is an iconic character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Starting off very strong, he is just as popular now as he has ever been. And with the continuation of his Disney Plus series, his legacy is reaching even further than ever thought possible. The first Avengers film, though, really did establish him as a premier bad guy. Lining up very perfectly with comic books and cartoons, Loki has always been one of the most kind of troublesome of Thor and the Avengers villains. And his appearance in Avengers Endgame really does kind of nail that overall presence of the character. With Endgame and a lot of those kind of original scenes from the past being reimagined, it makes sense that they would be able to revisit a lot of popular characters, such as Loki. And I'm very glad that they did. This is the exact look that I love for the character. With an updated portrait, costume, accessories, all of that, this is without a doubt a slam dunk. Now, is the likeness as good as it could be? I do not think so. That being said, they have released several other versions of Tom Hiddleston as Loki from the first season of Loki that really do nail it. And thanks to videos from my friend Justin's collections, you can really see how some of those other head sculpts can be swapped with this and still look really good, which is absolutely enticing me to buy the TVA version as well as the President Loki, as that's got that smirk that just absolutely embodies the character. I won't be able to put the horns on him, but just something about having Loki with that wicked grin absolutely appeals to me. Now, this version is available right now on places like Big Bad Toy Store, so I will put a link down in the video description if you'd like to add this guy to your collection. And the nice thing about this version of Loki is that he is, right now, the cheapest. The other ones kind of range around $300, so it is a little bit cheaper, but again, like I said, has more of that iconic classic Loki look for him, which I love. But beyond that, guys, that's about it. As always, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in and watching. And until next time, this is Optibotimus saying adios, au revoir, and auf Wiedersehen.